It's the People's House. This is, I'm actually leasing, and my lease runs out in 2 years.
Oh my.
Yeah, I hope to get my security deposit back.
I think you've treated it fairly well.
It looks okay.
I'm only going to get one shot at this. I don't think I'm going to get a lot of chances to interview the president, so I'm going to jump right in.
Let's do it.
Start grilling you. I watched the State of the Union. Yeah. A lot of really interesting ideas there. I'm not the only person who said this. A little worried that none of them are at all politically feasible. Am I wrong?
Well, first of all, there are some areas where I think we can get some Republican cooperation on infrastructure, for example. Historically, that hasn't been a partisan issue. Roads, bridges, now that we're in the 21st century, broadband lines into communities that don't have good access, making sure we've got first-class power grids so that we're not leaking a lot of energy and we can produce more energy without causing more carbon pollution. So there's some areas where I think right away we can get some cooperation. There's some areas where it's important for us to frame the debate and get the American people behind us, because even if something doesn't happen immediately here in Washington, it starts having an impact around the country. A great example, that's the minimum wage. I called for a rise in the minimum wage last year, and Congress still hasn't passed it yet, but in the meantime, you've got 17 states, you've got cities and others that are raising the minimum wage, and so it creates movements that ultimately change things in Washington as well.
So you used the phrase middle-class economics in the speech, which I think is an idea that we needed a phrase for.
Right.
But when I first told people I was going to be able to come talk to you, a lot of them expressed that they felt like the government was never going to have their interests at heart because the government existed to protect the interests of corporations and business. And the thing that they use as like the prime example of this is taking former leaders of industry and putting them in positions where they're regulating the industries they used to be in charge of.
Right.
Is that a legitimate concern, and do you understand where those people are coming from?
Look, I understand people's skepticism and cynicism. On the other hand, think about a bunch of stuff that government does do. I mean, since I've been in office, we've been able to take away money that was being siphoned off by banks in the student loan program, and billions of dollars are now suddenly going directly to students to make it easier for them to finance their student loans. Simple stuff that we often take for granted, like Social Security or Medicare for, in the case of many of your viewers, their grandparents. Mm-hmm. That's a government program that helps a lot of people. And so, what is true is that too often lobbyists and special interests are able to block efforts to make the system fair and to make it work better. But our history shows that when people get involved, when they get engaged, when they vote, that in fact, change happens. It doesn't always happen 100%, it doesn't always happen immediately, but it happens.
So, we're going to jump around a lot here because I have a lot of topics.
I understand.
I don't have a lot of It's okay. Crazy that I have to do this.
I'm going to keep my answers as short as possible.
I appreciate you
doing
that.
All right, I'll try to zip through it.
So, I feel like whenever a new weapons technology is developed, we spend 5 or 10 years sort of coming to understand the full implications of that new technology. And sometimes we look back at those initial years of its use as like we maybe misused or overused that technology. Are you at all worried that your administration is going to be seen as a time when drone strikes were a technology like we see as over or misused?
Well, basically drone technology came into its own right when I first came into office. We have tried to put a series of constraints on how it's used. But understand that our goal has always been, how do we target very specific terrorists who are proven to be trying to kill us, or more frequently kill innocent Muslims in their home countries? And how do we do that with as little damage to the surrounding communities and innocent people as possible? Part of what is really tough for me as Commander-in-Chief is the fact that any kind of war is damaging. Any kind of war results in casualties. And in fact, the sort of damage that may have taken place with a drone strike is always significantly less than if I ordered a raid into a village where a high-value terrorist target was. So you take the Bin Laden operation in Pakistan, for example, probably as successful and as effective operation as we could have imagined. Well, there were some people killed in that operation. And the truth of the matter is that anytime we're going after terrorists who are embedded in communities, there are dangers there. But I think it's entirely legitimate to say that as new technologies develop, we have to make sure that we step back and say, do we have a legal framework and a set of controls on it? Because I think what people worry about is that it's a little more antiseptic than when we send troops in, that it may seem as if there's no cost to it. And we've tried to do that, and I think there have been some lessons learned, and occasionally there have been mistakes that have been made, and nobody grieves over that more than I do, but it's something that we take very seriously. And I would argue that today's technologies can enable us to defend ourselves, causing less damage to those communities than in the past.
Sort of along those lines, there's a lot of bad things happening in the world, but I feel like none more so than the kind of generations-long oppression and even genocide that's been happening in North Korea. We recently, implemented new sanctions against North Korea because of a cyber attack against us. And that was obviously a problematic cyber attack, but no one was physically hurt.
Right.
I was surprised to find that there were any sanctions that we could sanction that hadn't been sanctioned yet. Like how was there anything left? And I feel like as the strongest nation in the world, it feels wrong that such injustice could exist in the world.
Well, look, North Korea is the most isolated, the most sanctioned, the most cut off nation on earth. And the kind of authoritarianism that exists there, you almost can't duplicate anywhere else. It's brutal and it's oppressive, and as a consequence, the country can't really even feed its own people. There aren't that many sanctions left. I mean, we keep on trying to ratchet it up a little bit higher. Over time, you will see a regime like this collapse. Our capacity to affect change in North Korea is somewhat limited because you've got a million-person army, and they have nuclear technologies and missiles. That's all they spend their money on, essentially, is on their war machine. And we've got an ally of ours, South Korea, right next door, that if there were a war, would be severely affected. So the answer is not going to be a military solution. We will keep on ratcheting the pressure, but part of what's happening is the environment that we're speaking in today, the internet, over time is going to be penetrating that country, and it is very hard to sustain that kind of brutal authoritarian regime in this modern world. Information ends up seeping in over time and bringing about change, and that's something that we are constantly looking for ways to accelerate.
Sometimes people think I do, but I don't smoke pot. And it just is not for me. I think that it's bad for my brain. I'm not into it, but people think I do smoke pot because I'm in favor of legalizing marijuana. And we're in a really weird place with marijuana right now. It's illegal in some places, but it's illegal everywhere, but in some places it's kind of okay. But if the state thinks it's not okay, then let's throw those people in jail. I feel like it leads to excessive incarceration, especially among minorities. And in places where it's been legalized, everything's doing okay.
Yeah.
How do we move forward out of this legal gray area weirdness?
Well, what you're seeing now is Colorado, Washington, through state referenda, they're experimenting with legal marijuana. The position of my administration has been that we still have federal laws that classify marijuana as an illegal substance, but we're not going to spend a lot of resources trying to turn back decisions that have been made at the state level on this issue. My suspicion is that you're going to see other states start looking at this. What I am doing at the federal level is asking my Department of Justice just to examine generally how we are treating nonviolent drug offenders. Because I think you're right. What we have done is, instead of focusing on treatment, the same way we focused, say, with tobacco or drunk driving or other problems where we treat it as a public health problem, we've treated this exclusively as a criminal problem. And I think that it's been counterproductive, and it's been devastating in a lot of minority communities. It presents the possibility, at least, of unequal application of the law. And that has to be changed. Now, the good news is that we're starting to get some interest among Republicans as well as Democrats in reforming the criminal justice system. We've been able to initiate some changes administratively, and last year you had the first time in 40 years where the crime rate and the incarceration rate went down at the same time. I hope we can continue with those trends because there's just a smarter way of dealing with these issues.
Well, we're almost out of time here, but I have brought a little something for you.
What do you got?
I'd like you to sign. So this is a picture of me holding a receipt from my pharmacy. I have a chronic condition.
That's a very fetching picture.
Well, thank you. And it's expensive to manage, but before I had insurance, I could not take this medication. It's about $1,100 a month, and that is a receipt showing it being $5 a month. So Obamacare has worked for me.
Obamacare has worked,
so,
and
thanks for that.
That makes me feel good. Hank, your story is the story of so many people around the country. You've been managing a chronic disease, so you, I think, are probably more attuned to the dangers of not having health insurance. Yeah. A lot of young people who are your viewers, they don't have a chronic disease, so they think, why do I need it? Until something happens. And I hope that people have started to become aware, now that we've got a year under our belt. Overwhelming majorities of people are satisfied when they get coverage through Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. It typically costs less than your cell phone bill or your cable bill. It gives you peace of mind. And I want to encourage everybody who hasn't at least looked at it to go to healthcare.gov. As you know, we had some bad hiccups initially in terms of the website, but now the website works really well.
It does.
And it's really fast, and there's no wait. So everybody who's watching, make sure that you try it out.
Keep watching the live stream, though, but then afterward, maybe go look at it.
All right. Thanks, Hank.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm really proud of what you're doing, and thanks to everybody who watches all the great stuff that you're putting on the web.
Thank you very much.
All right. Appreciate you. Thanks.
Mr. President, the next topic that we're going to cover